Hey guys, it's me, Sam Stein, managing editor at the Bulwark, and I'm joined by Andrew Egger, the author of Morning Shots. It's Thursday, midday, March 6th. Subscribe to the feed. We're about to talk about Elon. An L for Elon, who this afternoon it was reported that during a Trump cabinet meeting, which Musk attended, the president told cabinet secretaries that they actually have the authority, mostly the final say, to make staffing decisions around their own agencies. Now, in normal times, this would be treated as an of course, because of course. Like, why did we need to clarify this? We need to clarify this because Elon's been going completely batshit crazy on these agencies, taking an absolute axe to them, cutting staffers, cutting functions that then he has to go back and add because he fucked it up so badly. And people are getting pissed off about this. So before I get to Andrew, the smartest guy that we have on staff, let me just read what Donald Trump put out in a, what do they call these things again? A bleat. We're calling them a bleat. Okay, here's the bleat. Donald Trump. The golden age of America has just begun! Exclamation point. Over the past 6 weeks, our administration has delivered on promises like no administration before it, always putting America first. Doge has been an incredible success. And now that we have my cabinet in place, I've instructed the secretaries and leadership to work with Doge on cost-cutting measures and staffing. As the secretaries learn about and understand the people working for the various departments, they can be very precise as to who will remain and who will go. We say the scalpel rather than the hatchet. A combination of them, Elon, Doge, and other great people will be able to do things at a historic level. We just had a meeting with most of the secretaries, Elon and others, and it was a very positive one. Blah, 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 blah. We're going to have these meetings every 2 weeks, blah, 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 so on and so forth. Politico's reporting this a little bit more directly, saying Elon got rebuked. But Andrew, what do you make of it?
Yeah, all this stuff is really funny because the line from the White House is always like, we don't know what anybody's talking about. Everybody's rowing in the same direction here. We're all on the same page under the august leadership of Donald J. Trump. But this is a huge shift, right? I mean, this is extremely striking on a few different levels. One is that there have been these kind of head-butting clashes between Elon Musk and the actual cabinet secretaries who, in theory, constitutionally have the authority over these agencies for a couple weeks now, right? I mean, we saw this bubbling up in a bunch of different ways. I mean, Marco Rubio at the State Department would say that certain programs would be protected, and then Elon Musk's Doge Bros actually down there with their hands on the levers would cut these programs anyway. Or Elon Musk would send an email to everybody in the federal government and say, if you don't respond to this, you're fired. And their agency heads would say, actually, don't respond to that email. We're dealing with that. But all through that, I mean, as recently as I think it was last week, right, when that cabinet when Trump had his first public meeting of the cabinet. I mean, Trump used that meeting with all of his cabinet secretaries on hand and the press in the room. He used it to very publicly throw his weight further behind Elon, right? I mean, Elon was the one who talked the most, even though he is not in the cabinet. And basically the job of the cabinet secretaries there was for Trump to throw to them and say, hey, does anybody have a problem with what Elon's doing? And for them to kind of say, no, we love it, and kind of clap for him and stuff. And so that was all happening. But meanwhile, already then you had started to see these stories of Musk going way too far and cutting insane things that were insane. Well,
let me just read one of these stories, which happened today. Okay, mm-hmm. This is just today. And we'll get to the fact that this happens like several times a day, because that's what your Morning Shots is about. But the story today in the Post, which really, if you just read it, it's just absolutely remarkable to think that this is happening. But they basically get notes from an internal Social Security Administration meeting in which the newly installed head of the SSA, Leland Dudek, basically admits that things have gotten out of his control, frankly, because of Doge. The quote that he says to a group of advocates is, quote, "Things are currently operating in a way I have never seen in government before." I'm laughing because it's like petrifying. He referred to the Doge team as, quote, "outsiders who are unfamiliar with nuances of SSA programs." He goes on, "Doge people are learning and they will make mistakes, but we have to let them see what is going on at SSA. I am relying on longtime career people to inform my work, but I am receiving decisions that are made without my input. I have to effectuate those decisions. If you step back and you think about that, the guy who's running the retirement program for our country, the social insurance retirement program for our country, is saying he can't control a group of 20-something people, outsiders, who are cutting programs indiscriminately that they don't know anything about. Like, that's totally insane. I know we say about everything, but that's totally insane.
Yeah, and Musk's personal philosophy on all this stuff has been, I mean, it's been like the kind of move fast and break things. We say that phrase like 20 times a day now. That's the ethos he's brought to all of this. And his basic problem is like, well, his basic argument has always been, well, what's the downside? Because if we cut anything that turns out to have been load bearing, people will just tell us. That's what you're there for, is to tell us what went wrong, and we'll just put it right back. So what's the problem? And obviously, you know, we've talked until we're blue in the face already about all of the ways in which that breaks down, all of the ways in which it is much easier to break these things kind of thoughtlessly than it is to try to piece them back together, which is true of most things in life, most things in the world. Can't just like smash a vase and then be like, well, just unsmash it. You
gotta buy a new vase.
Right.
Happens.
And then meanwhile, you know, it's been kind of a lagging indicator, but like every one of these stories that has come out has kind of built up this drag on these guys where people are mad. They're waylaying their Republican representatives at their town hall meetings. I mean, you see it just in the public opinion polling of Trump overall, and certainly of Musk and Doge, which has lagged behind the popularity of Trump overall. But Doge has been like the main thing that's been in the news for Trump for weeks and weeks.
I know. And that's the thing. It's like all these lawmakers are, I mean, it's very evident to me that, and we could get to the story yesterday in the Post, it's the lawmakers who are complaining about this. And the Politico story on this cabinet meeting it does reference the fact that it was John Thune, the Senate Majority Leader, who went on CNN and said, they got to dial it back a little bit. And
Doge is going about this and doing the big scrub, but now that you've got, and this is why we work so hard to get cabinet people in place, is hand it off to these leaders, these managers who are going to be making decisions, and they're going to be, I think, probably better attuned.
That was what prompted this. But like today, for instance, Bill Huizenga, a Republican in Michigan, it's reported that he's asking people to stop calling his office because there's so much backlash. Republicans have said, oh, these are all Democratic plans.
If you just go to an open forum right now, why? Because we've seen this movie before. George Soros funded groups and others literally pay protesters.
At the same time, they're advising their own lawmakers to stop holding town hall meetings. Like, clearly people are agitated about this. Today, Lisa Murkowski said she heard from officials in Alaska who work with USAID and were like, what's happening there is a travesty. And so all this stuff is building up. And Trump doesn't respond to a lot of things, but he does respond to the sense that something unpopular is happening underneath them. And
yeah. Lines on graphs mean a lot to Donald Trump, right? Like a line pointing up is a cause for celebration, and a line pointing down is a cause for monkeying.
I don't know if you're
around
being facetious, but I think that I do believe that. And if his popularity goes this way, he's like, fuck, right? Like, that's not what he wants.
Did you see, we could do a whole different video on this. Did you see the graph that the president of Mexico showed him today that like made him super happy and got him to yank the tariffs off?
No,
we can talk
about
that later. It's exactly that. It's a line pointing down graph. Big in the brain of Donald Trump. But seriously, I mean, like this is the kind of thing, and so Trump is getting all this input from all these different people. He is seeing these kind of signals that matter to him, and I think there is a degree of like, and to what with all this? It's not like there's an enormous amount of upside for him personally in making all this happen. Especially
because he's the guy who's could care less about like cutting government programs. Like, he's not, intellectually or philosophically stimulated by this stuff. He doesn't care. If anything, he wants to make sure that Social Security is functioning, right? Like, he believes firmly that he needs to keep the social safety net intact. So if a story pops up that the SSA is, doing automated call centers and wait times are now 2 hours, and that, the guy who's administering the program doesn't have any clue what's going on, Trump to a degree is going to be like, that's not good for me. Like, my people depend on that. He's the one who said he didn't want Medicaid cut.
Yeah.
Don't touch it. Like, that's where his head's at.
Yeah. And the really interesting thing to me in all of this, and this is something that Jamie brought up before we even started the call, is like, ordinarily Donald Trump has a playbook for something like this. Like things start to go wrong. The guy who he thinks is responsible is going to kind of fall out of his favor. Eventually, he'll put all the sins on him. He can't
fire Elon.
And send him out in the wilderness. But that's the problem. That's the problem.
Right.
Elon is his own thing, right? He's kind
too
of
big, too big to fire.
Yeah. And there's never really been anybody like that in Trump's orbit before. So it's weird in that way.
Well,
he certainly cannot put Elon out to pasture. I don't think he's like fully lost confidence in him or anything like that.
There was one person in his orbit.
Who's that?
Ivanka. Couldn't fire his daughter.
Yeah, that's true. Did he ever want to fire her?
Or Jared, I guess. That would have been awkward.
Right. Yeah. What's Jared up to these days? We don't hear a whole lot from Jared in the second.
Shaking down the Saudis, getting some money. All right, on Elon. So then what happens next? I mean, like, he's going to do his thing, right? Like, that's the thing. I'm not totally sold yet that this is like a break or demotion. I think, I don't know if I'm ready to go that far because I feel like, one, Elon's not the type of guy who's going to be like, okay, I'm going to move on back to Tesla. But two, I think Trump kind of wants to project this idea that he's bringing Elon back a little bit, reining him in. But I actually don't think he cares all that much about this stuff. And because he doesn't care about that stuff, I don't think he's going to take practical steps to make Elon stop doing these things.
No, I think that's exactly right. And I think that's why what comes next is really interesting and could go a few different ways, right? Because right. In theory, you could imagine a world where Elon kind of like takes the slap on the wrist, is willing to step back into this sort of advisory role. There's all kinds of reasons why like they could like strategically want that anyway, because Russell Vought is coming in at OMB and is trying to like systematize a lot of this stuff. Right. House Republicans and Senate Republicans are talking about, a rescission package to make some of these cuts like permanent as a matter of law. So like you could have Elon doing his stuff now and then all these other guys come in to backfill his work. But this is a guy who doesn't take direction, is so used to being his own boss. I mean, like that's the reason why this has gone the way it has so far, right? Because like he's just going to go in, he's going to monkey with what he wants to monkey with. He's going to turn everything into like a pure power play in his favor, the same way Donald Trump always does. There's two of these guys who are like not quite parallel anymore, right? The lines sort of intersect in a weird way, and it's not clear how all that's going to kind of bounce out.
If Trump wants an off ramp, it's going to be really tricky, because you can't offend this guy who has all the money in the world and basically threw 250 million behind your election and probably wants the goods that come with that. At the same time, he's causing some real brand damage, and I think that's indisputable at this point. All right, we'll be watching it with popcorn, probably. Andrew Egger, look at what's in your backdrop. What is this? Just a plain white wall? What is this?
No, I lugged a plant in here. So you would not mock the plain white wall. I even have some art, but I didn't want to barge in on you and steal your hammer.
You can have it after this. Andrew Egger, folks, here all day. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to the feed. Got a lot more stuff like this coming. Peace.
Hey, YouTube fam. If you want to support the Bulwark, the best way to do it is by becoming a YouTube Bulwark Plus member. The Bulwark is truly independent. We have no corporate overlords. We're not settling any dumb lawsuits with Trump. By joining, you help support our work, and you can get a bunch of perks right here on this platform. Ad-free content, bonus videos, live streams, and some emojis of me, which I guess some people want. So come join, come hang out, become a Bulwark YouTube Plus member, and I'll be seeing you in the comments. So behave.